Hello, everyone. This is another episode of the Shanka Ponsole podcast. And today we will talk about an aspect of my childhood that I'm very proud of, and that is I was actually a private pilot at the age of 16. My elementary school teacher asked me, how come you have not really continued down that path of becoming a pilot? And I think it's because she doesn't know how far I actually went. And yeah, so Andrea, you know that part of my story, don't you?
I do. I find it fascinating that you actually got your license to fly before you got your license to drive. Is that true?
Yes, that is true.
Tell us a
So,
little bit about it.
yeah. So there is essentially the backstory goes I was always kind of attracted by airplanes and by the United States and by aviation, which led me to go to an air show that took place in Berlin. And I went there with friends, and I approached one of the airplanes that was used during World War II to conduct the Berlin airlift when Berlin was cut off from the world and the citizens were in need of supplies and groceries and all of that. So I approached the airplane, beautiful plane, and underneath the plane sat a old gentleman. His name was Gerald Munn, and he had flown during the Second World War. He had flown that airplane during the airlift, the Berlin airlift, and I told him about my hopes and dreams about US citizenship and about being able to fly. And he said, well, this man was really very, very important in my life story because he said, okay, first of all, I want you to figure out if you really want to become a pilot as early as possible because you're going to sit a lot in a plane if you become a pilot. And second of all, I want you to come and meet me again in Frankfurt with your mother so that we can talk about this. And I said, great, I want that. So the air show is over. I go home and I tell my mother, Mom, I met this old gentleman and he wants to meet you in Frankfurt. He's a US veteran and it's all about flying and he wants to talk to me about becoming a pilot. And to my surprise, Blanche agreed to that because you have to understand kind of the situation, this stranger wants me to come to Frankfurt. My mom did not really like the idea of war, so knowing that he was involved in the Second World War, but was probably nothing she found impressive. But for whatever reason, she agreed to it. And it must have.
Remember at all what her expression was like or her response? Did you feel like it was genuine, like this would all really happen? Or maybe she was just appeasing you?
No, I think she knew by then that, if I was serious about something, I was gonna do it. And I think she just really wanted to always support me in my dreams, even if those dreams were not in alignment with her values. So she was always good at that. But I'm pretty sure it was a huge stretch. And back then, I didn't see that. But now, as I have grown older, I just cannot imagine how much of an effort that was for her. So we go to Frankfurt. A few months later, we drive there.
How far would the drive?
Yeah, I want to say between 2 and 3 hours from Luxembourg, and I remember it was in a pretty upscale hotel. He was there for some type of convention, and we could certainly not afford the hotel, so we agreed with him on lunch after his meeting. So that happened, and I essentially, he won my mom's trust, and he made all of us understand that two things needed to happen. Number one, I needed to get my pilot's license as early as possible in my life so that I could find out if it was something that I would consider doing professionally for the rest of my life. And number two is he invited me to go and visit him and his wife in Florida, where he was living. So all of that happened. I must have been 14 or 15 when this takes place, because I remember you can have your private pilot's license at the age of 16. So
here, driver's license?
Yeah, 18. You got to be 18.
Oh, you need to be 18.
Yeah, you can fly earlier than you can drive, and I think it's because.
How common is that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it is just because when a small country adopts legislation, what they do is they look at what other countries do, and then they modify it. It's a huge time saver, and I have no doubt that Luxembourg went and looked at the American legislation, and it's probably 16 years, instead of 18. So I go to my grandfather and my mother, and I'm like, I want to do this. And they say, okay, there's a sum of money that was meant for you when you turn 18, so that you can go and study and do whatever you need to do, and you can have access to that money earlier, and then you're gonna use it for that purpose. And that's how I financed it. So me starting to study for these complicated tests at the age of 16, passing the tests. I have never wanted something more than passing those tests, and it was complicated stuff: aerodynamics, meteorology, international rules of flight, and I had to fly practical lessons and meet all of the requirements to get my hands on the private pilot license.
Did you know any other peers who were around your age who were doing that?
Only the people in my cohort there, which one of them is a professional airline pilot to this day.
Oh, wow.
Flying for Cargo Lux, which is one of the world's biggest freight airlines, and it's obviously, like the name alludes to, a Luxembourg airline. And then the other person you actually know, you've met him, JL, yeah.
Oh,
a common acquaintance of us, JL, was also with me at boarding school, and he was there too, interestingly enough. So let's see. Okay, now I'm flying throughout Luxembourg and its neighboring countries on a pretty regular basis, but it is super expensive. Like 1 hour of flying would cost about 300 euros consistently.
Oh, wow.
So even though I had access to that money that I was given, which I believe was roughly $2,000, but that was burned fast, right? And because I had to be cost conscious, I could never really fly very far, and I was always in a radius of up to a maximum of 2 hours per month I would fly. Okay, so which would amount to roughly $500-600 per month, and that was a lot of money. Now,
oh yeah, and back in the day that would have been
a lot of money. And the only way I could afford that was that, if you remember, I tutored a lot. So that's how I had the money, right? Because the $2,000 that I was given, that was basically spent on acquiring the license.
Right.
But then to keep it up to date.
So you fed your habit.
Oh yeah, of course.
With your tutoring. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, super ambitious,
Yeah.
entrepreneurial from the beginning, and then you took your money and you did what not a whole lot of people your age were doing. What was everyone else spending their money on at that time? Did they have any money to spend?
Well, my peers at boarding school didn't have that much money, but the money they did have, they spent on beer.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Did you ever do that?
No, to this day I have yet to drink my entire glass of beer. I don't like beer. So anyway, as you remember, my boarding school was located in a former monastery, and monks, and that they like to drink beer. A lot of breweries actually happen to be also monasteries at the same time, if you remember that. So anyway, let's see. So
you started blowing a lot of money. Well,
yeah, I would.
No, it was going towards a good place, but it just got really costly. You were doing all your tutoring, and then what happened?
Yeah, well, then I actually went to Florida to meet Jerry in Bradenton, Florida. Bradenton is where the headquarters of Tropicana is located, by the way. So if you go there, it always smells like fresh orange juice. And a gallon of orange juice is super cheap. I think they have a special agreement to have like subsidized orange juice there. And yeah, so anyhow, I spent a lot of time with Jerry listening to his war stories, but I also spent a lot of time with his wife, Marge, who told me her perspective of being married to an aviator. And she told me, he was breathing, eating, living airplanes, and that was not fun for me because he was always away. And back, I didn't see that in my future, being always away from the people I care about. So that was really a huge detractor to me. And also, I had flown enough as a private pilot to know flying is rather boring, because once you're up there, you keep the course, and that's essentially it. Now, it surely didn't help that I was always limited to a 2-hour radius, right? But the takeoffs and the landings are interesting. And then once you're up there, it's kind of monotonous. So that led me to decide that flying was not going to be a professional career of mine. And there was a moment in the 90s where gas prices just spiked tremendously, and 1 hour of flight would cost almost 500 euros. And that was the moment where I said, okay, you got to stop this. Do I miss it? Yes, I miss flying in small planes as a hobby. But yeah, I mean, that was a season in my life, as they say. And I certainly do not regret it. I learned so much about aerodynamics, international flight law, meteorology. There was a little bit of electronics in there because we learned to also understand the instruments for navigation and all of that. And I had some great memories where I took people to fly with me, friends, acquaintances, even instructors from police academy. They would fly with me, my mom's friends, and all of that is super impressive. I remember when I was practicing touch and goes, which basically means landing and taking off non-stop in an endless loop. My mom spent hours and hours with me touching and going, and when you learn that, you never have smooth landings at the beginning. They're always like bumpy. So instead of making the plane smoothly touch down, sometimes you like almost jump down, and my mom spent hours with me in the plane, assisting me in that. So that was fun, But that was essentially the story, and I kind of want to go back to this idea of um, also being in Florida with Jerry, because that was pretty awesome. He took me and flew with me throughout the nation, really, and because he was still a pilot in his advanced age, and we discovered the United States together, and he really like gave me this sense of an American citizen will take you and help you as a European to fulfill your dream, and that was awesome. It was really awesome.
Cool. Well, I think that you still have an appreciation for flying that always shows up in everything that we do, like drones, for example. And I know that's very different, so don't come for me, all of y'all out there. Drones are different than planes. Yeah, but you still get to. I mean, it's the sky, right? So you get to there, and there's some of the rules that are the same in terms of aerodynamics. And there's even places where you can't, like, no fly go zone or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it will like lock, right, where you can't even fly your equipment if it's within a certain radius of airports and all of these things. There's some overlap, just appreciating aircrafts and being in the sky. And we did, for our birthday a couple of years ago now, we did maybe it was last year actually, when we did paramotoring, and it's really nice to be suspended in the air. And I think that there's a lot of patience you learn, right, from flying.
Yeah.
And
a lot of attention to detail, a lot of appreciation for checklists and rules and safety. To this day, because one rule in flying is before you turn left, you turn your head left, and no matter how many instruments you have to guarantee your safety, you turn your head left, because you never know if there's a bird or a balloon or something or a plane that your instrument doesn't catch, right? And that has stuck with me. It has really impacted my driving, because I don't know if you notice it, but to this day, even though we have these indicators in the mirror that show whether a car is next to you in your blind spot.
Hard on me when if I don't look over my left shoulder all the way, you will definitely point it out. So yes, I know that's ingrained in you.
So I wanted to kind of wrap this up. I want to share a story that is interesting.
Go for it.
Yeah. So I was always a very law-abiding person, and I still am, right? But there was this time when I was studying. No, I had my pilot's license, and we went out with a couple of friends, and we were at this party, and then the one of the friends says, "Hey, Shankar, do you want to drive this car?" And I said, no, I shouldn't. I don't have a driver's license yet. And long story short is, he got me to a point where I said, okay, I guess I'll drive it down this path here. So I drove. And of course, what happens to people who should always behave and they don't? They got caught right away. So we got stopped by a policeman.
Oh, I've never heard this.
Yeah. We got stopped by a policeman, and his name was Jerry too, interestingly enough. And he, I lowered the window, and he asks me, all right, so can I see your driver's license? And I say, well, I don't have I was just so shocked and nervous.
But
Again,
honest.
yeah. So I tell him, well, I don't have a license to drive, but in my desperation, I said, I have a license to fly. And yeah, he took it wrong because he thought flying in as driving fast, because it didn't make sense to him that a 17-year-old.
You were mouthing off.
Yeah. So he's
Smart-ass.
basically his reaction was, okay, so you're in timeout now. Get out of the car and follow me to the office. So this went to court.
What?
But because I was underage, I had to do a few hours of community service. I actually had to help clean at a hospital, right?
You have never revealed this before.
See
what happens when you listen to the Shankar Ponsule podcast?
Yeah.
You learn.
Yeah. So I was assigned to Vidalia, was the head nurse. Vidalia told me, clean this and clean that. And she was very happy with me because she said, nobody ever comes to these community service things. People just don't show up. And I did. I treated it as a job, and it was a great experience. So now here's the funny part. When you then apply for police academy, they conduct an investigation whether you're a good candidate, and of course that showed up, right? So, but they understood everything. They understood, okay, this was like a young boy's incident. We'll forgive him that. But here's the kicker. In my, during police academy, you have practical internships. Guess with whom I went on patrol in my internship?
No way.
Yeah, with Jerry.
Oh, that is hilarious.
So I walk into his office, and he looks at me, and he says, I know you from somewhere. No, I knew exactly where I knew him from, but he didn't. So I just told him, yeah, we might have met a few years ago, and and he loved it. He was like, oh my goodness, this is so awesome and funny, how life plays these tricks on you, right? But that's kind of the.
I love that.
Yeah, that's the end story.
It was a full circle moment.
Full circle, yeah.
Where you had this encounter with the same officer that would be.
Yeah.
Your superior in police academy.
Mm-hmm.
That is great.
Yep. So patterns of circles, in life. It's something that is really true. Like there's always circles. There's always things that come back, and this camera is really playing tricks on us here. I think you're right. We need to keep the face tracking on. But yeah, I hope you have enjoyed this episode, and I shared a segment of my life that was really very defining for everything that follows, because it gave me so much confidence to know that I could be a pilot, that I could, before I had even graduated high school, I was fucking flying airplanes, and that was awesome because it was not easy to achieve it, but it was so fulfilling. And to this day, it's something I can brag about, and which was really an awesome part of my history. So if you have liked this podcast, please consider giving it a good review. You know how that helps with other people getting access to it. And I am very thirsty now.
All right.
All right.
We will see you later. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.
Bye.